Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know how to say this, but we have more absolutely major, absolutely critical information regarding the Pac-12 conference. And guys, this is the biggest bombshell in the last 2 or 3 weeks at least. Major news to share with you guys on this Monday. I'll just go ahead and read it and we'll react to it. So this was considered sensitive info for a while, but the silence of these two universities is about to be over. Stanford and California have kept quiet, watched the landscape, and now are about to take matters into their own hands. The first shoe to drop was Notre Dame and NBC and the whole shoulder programming proposal. Well, a big aspect of this programming and a key part of Notre Dame working close with the Big 12 is throwing a lifeline to Stanford. But Stanford has many reservations about Big 12 membership for political and cultural reasons, but it looks like self-preservation is winning out. So guys, Stanford to the Big 12, that seems shocking. We've never heard anything like that. The only thing I had heard on Stanford was a possible invite to the Big 10, mainly due to the academics, mainly due to the idea of also bringing Notre Dame in. This is a new rumor we're getting with Stanford and Cal. Now, California makes a little bit more sense in terms of desperation than Stanford does. Stanford's fit in the Big 12 seems rather unorthodox, to say the least. And then this update on California. So California is in a bad place, and the Pac-12 money is looking bad, like defaulting on debt bad. The Pac-12 is going bankrupt. I said it yesterday. It is so ugly. Every team in that conference is looking to get out. What an absolute disaster. They are facing a totally dissolved conference at this point. We're getting updates from all these different teams. The only things we haven't heard from would be, actually we have heard stuff on Oregon State, Washington State possibly going to the Mountain West. We've heard everything with all of these teams now in the Pac-12 trying to find a lifeline, and it's gotten so bad, Stanford is considering joining the Big 12, which makes no sense, except for the idea that the Pac-12 is in such a bad spot that Stanford is like, we got to get out. We got to go anywhere to stay relevant at this point. We can't wait for Notre Dame to go to the Big 10, which would possibly facilitate Stanford to the Big 10. Again, the working theory is that if Notre Dame goes to the Big 10, Stanford would also go to the Big 10. And we haven't even discussed Washington and Oregon. There's some major allegations made against those two schools in this update. We're going to get to that in a second. We're going to get to that. Where was I? Basically, Stanford and Cal are now talking to the Big 12 with Notre Dame trying to help facilitate. Adding those two with Arizona and Colorado is revenue positive according to media partners, so there is a major incentive now. This is the Big 12's window, because you guys remember the situation the Big 12 was in. You have the Big 10 at 16 teams. You have the SEC at 16 teams. You've got the Big 12 at 12 teams. Conventional wisdom would say the Big 12 is also going to try and get to 16 teams. The issue was if the Big 12 was going to add Arizona, Arizona State, Oregon, and Colorado, they would be at a net positive because they would dilute their conference. But if they add instead of adding Arizona State and Utah, instead of those two schools, you still add Arizona and Colorado, but you also bring on California and Stanford. That makes it a net positive because Stanford and California bring in more in terms of revenue than Arizona State and Utah. That's, how it was explained to me. So this is a major opening for the Big 12, possibly adding Stanford, California. It makes sense for California because
California very likely is going to get shut out of obviously the SEC and the Big Ten. There were some people saying maybe Cal can get into the Big Ten, but realistically, if you know the Pac-12 is fully dissolving, if you know they're going bankrupt, they're going into debt, their negotiation with ESPN has been such a disaster, ESPN lowballed them horribly. This is a situation where California is just looking for a lifeline. The one thing that, it doesn't make sense, Notre Dame helping facilitate Stanford to the Big 12, that is a very, very interesting rumor. And we've got more stuff, and here it is, guys. Oregon and Washington are playing poker and about to fold. So Oregon and Washington are about to fold. Direct quote from the second source that corroborated this information. Oregon and Washington have fractured their relationship beyond repair due to their demands. Remember, it was reported Oregon and Washington wanted unequal revenue sharing, and the reason they asked for that was because Oregon and Washington, they have leverage over every other team in the Pac-12 now that USC and UCLA are gone. There's no other big teams in the Pac-12. Oregon and Washington are thinking to themselves, we're basically holding this conference up by a thread, and now Oregon and Washington getting greedy, asking for certain things, wanting to be treated as better than other conference members has rubbed the Pac-12 the wrong way. Even without their public statements, the Pac-12 is becoming every man for himself. That is directly in this tweet. One of the two sources that shared this told me that Stanford is pushing for Big 12 to rebrand if they add Pac-12 schools, something that moves forward and forgets about the past. Yeah, I'm guessing Stanford's fit in the Big 12 is a confusing one, to say the least. It's not surprising they would push for some sort of rebrand, or you think they would also want another elite academic institution in there. Like, normally, that's the whole idea of Stanford going to the Big Ten. You've already got several elite academic programs. Even like Stanford, it would make sense to go to even like the SEC. Nah, I wouldn't say the SEC, but you could say they've got Vanderbilt in the SEC. The Big 12's got no elite academic universities. That's why Stanford to the Big 12 is so shocking. This just goes to the idea that the Pac-12 is in such a bad spot financially. They're in such a bad spot in terms of the fractures within the conference between the teams, the relationships. Every team is trying to get out. And then we've got major stuff regarding the TV contracts. What's going to happen with CBS? We know their SEC deal is ending. Who are they going to pick up? What is ESPN going to do? This is the latest on that. CBS not wanting leftover Big Ten programming. So that's the whole idea that Fox is just obsessed with the Big Ten. It's so bad. Big Noon is terrible for college football. It's disgusting. But Fox has a stranglehold on Tier 1 Big Ten programming. They're going to pay a disgusting amount for it. And CBS is saying, we don't want Northwestern versus Nebraska, is basically what they're saying, because they would not get the Tier 1 programming in the Big Ten. Fox Sports is going to get that. So they don't want that from the Big Ten. Whose schools, so it looks like Big Ten schools are not liking the whole idea of weeknight games, and CBS wants Tier 1 content. Fox has too much invested in the Big Ten to lose Tier 1 content. Yeah, dude. Oh, God, man. At some point, at what point does Ohio State tell Fox Sports, you're not allowed, you have no rights to air any Ohio State football game on Big Noon? At what point it's killing recruiting? Either way, guys, this was already known. Fox Sports is obsessed with the Big Ten, just like ESPN is obsessed with the SEC. They're going to spend a crazy amount in their next TV deal with the Big Ten to secure that Tier 1 programming, which is all the Big Noon crap. It's Michigan versus Ohio State. It's Ohio State versus Penn State and whatever. CBS knows that going against SEC on Saturdays only splits viewership, and they can get better ratings doing Thursday, Friday night games with big matchups. That's why CBS is telling the Big 12 through back channels that if they don't get the Big 10, they're not going to get Big 10 Tier 1. They're just not. I would love, that was, the hope was That was the hope, that CBS would get Big Ten Tier 1 rights. It's not going to happen, though. They're going to apparently shift and then outbid anyone on the Big 12's Tier 1 rights. At that point, CBS would enact their plan of having primetime games on Thursday and Friday night because they don't want to go up against the Big Ten, on Saturday at noon, on Saturday at 3:30, on Saturday at 7. They don't want to go up against the SEC on ESPN on Saturday. So it does make sense from a CBS perspective, and I think CBS is, they're a great network. They do great work there, and I would love to see CBS get some major games in college football. So the Big 12 may sit back and wait to make sure CBS doesn't get Big 10 Tier 1 content before making any final decisions, but it looks like Stanford is in play for Big 12 membership. This is breaking, absolutely real, absolutely critical intel regarding conference realignment. We've got official rumors that Stanford and California might be headed to the Big 12 conference along with Colorado and Arizona. We talked about that a few days ago, of course, but this is breaking stuff. And then we've got this that just came out last night. If Stanford would come, they wouldn't want to be the only California school, but Cal is not a good fit for the Big 12 at all. But neither is Stanford. I feel like Stanford's a worse fit for the Big 12 than California. I don't know, maybe I have that wrong. There are some trying to angle San Diego State or even Fresno as an alternative partner for Stanford, but the metrics show Cal is actually more desirable to be TV partners, so that's very interesting. If California does, if you're California, isn't this a great move? Where else are you going to go? If the Pac-12 is collapsing, it feels like this is a lifeline you've got to take. But let's say something happens, California is not a good fit for the Big 12. They could take Stanford along with San Diego State, poach them from the Mountain West, and those would be two teams that go to the Big 12. So they've got other options, essentially, is what that means. I think what we are seeing is that the deep fractures in the Pac-12 are leading to schools feeling out all other options, trying to formulate backup plans. The infighting is bad currently with those schools. Fractures have formed. No one has control. This conference, we're watching the Pac-12 dissolve before our eyes. This is a historic moment in college football history, folks. Reading this, I'll read the last sentence again. No one has control. This is crazy. This is history right now. We're watching the Pac-12 bankrupt itself. We're watching the Pac-12 dissolve. I normally don't get a lot of Mountain West Conference rumors, but I did get a good one this morning that the Mountain West is fully expecting the Pac-12 to be either dissolved or weakened severely enough that they fully expect Arizona State, Washington State, and Oregon State, and maybe even Utah to be partners with the Mountain West Conference in the very near future. Oh my goodness, folks. This is the biggest intel I've ever shared on this channel, the most stuff. Oh my God. With so much so that they are already talking with TV partners about reopening their contract for the expansion merger coming. They've either opened discussions with Gonzaga about joining in basketball in the event they expand. Wow. So the Mountain West Conference is expecting a merger with Oregon State, Washington State, Arizona State, and maybe even Utah if Utah doesn't go to the Big 12. And they want to reopen TV negotiations with these new teams, maybe joining the conference, maybe just as some sort of merger. And then possibly also taking Gonzaga from the West Coast Conference for basketball, which would be an amazing fit there as well. If you get these teams, Gonzaga gets some bigger matchups for their basketball program. So this is all absolutely breaking right now. The bombshell we got today is the idea that Stanford University may be looking to join the Big 12 Conference along with possibly California or San Diego State. Of course, we got the rumor that San Diego State might be going to the Pac-12, but I don't know if that's off the table now, if the Pac-12 is in fully
they're cannibalizing themselves. They're in a total destruction right now as we speak, and it's being documented. The Pac-12 is dissolving, and this is a process that's taking a little bit of time. The first week of August, we're expecting major news, but this intel is what an unbelievable job by this source sharing it. And wow, I've got full faith in this source. He was the first one to break the USC, UCLA news to the Big Ten. This is the best college football source out there. He has my full endorsement, and this is crazy stuff we're hearing. I really don't think the fit between Stanford and the Big 12 works, but it does make sense if Notre Dame helps facilitate potentially Stanford going to the Big 12, but they would be the best, academic institution by far, and it does make sense that Stanford also wants to take Cal with them to have another California school in the Big 12. So, guys, this is all stuff we're hearing right now. And I'm guessing there's going to be more major updates throughout the week. One of the biggest updates I can give on the current situation, we heard the rumors with Colorado and Arizona. They're headed to the Big 12 within the first week of August. And now we've got basically every team within the Pac-12 doing some sort of scramble. You've even got teams like Washington State, Oregon State talking about a potential merger with the Mountain West Conference. Where does Utah go? Are they part of that merger, or maybe they get in with the Big 12? What is happening? The next biggest question: what is going on with Washington and Oregon? Oh no. Are they part of that merger to the Mountain West? They're still trying to get into the Big Ten if it possibly expands more. Maybe this is an opening for Washington if the Big Ten expands, if Stanford goes to the Big 12. Now the Big Ten needs a new dance partner for Notre Dame. We've heard if Notre Dame's dance partner is not Stanford, the next team up would be Washington, not Oregon. That's the intel we had. It would be Washington. So the two teams going to the Big Ten, if the Big Ten gets Notre Dame, would be Notre Dame. And if Stanford goes to the Big 12, they're out. So it would be Notre Dame and the University of Washington into the Big Ten. And Oregon would be looking for a lifeline from possibly the SEC at that point. So guys, this is all major stuff. We're going to continue to update it. But wow, crazy reports today. Make sure you're following me on Twitter, guys. Link to that's always in the description. I'm, of course, the Depressed Ginger. Thank you for watching.